Hi, welcome to the Literature Lounge, which is literally and totally dedicated to authors who write books that make great films and conversation starters. So let's just talk books. Hi, in today's episode, we have with us Shri Prakash Singh ji. He's written the book Unforgettable Chapters, Memoirs of a Top Cop. So please hold on. We will hear a lot of inside stories from Prakash today. He's been a distinguished officer of the Indian Police Service, has had the unique distinction of having commanded the world's largest single police force, that of Uttar Pradesh. And that isn't easy, we know that. Also, the world's largest border guarding outfit, the BSF, Border Security Force. He's also led the Assam Police in India's turbulent Northeast, which is a personal favorite part that I need to get down to. I have so much of history there. Prakash Singh ji has contributed to combating the insurgency in Nagaland, containing the threat of the United Liberation Front of Assam, the ULFA, neutralizing the terrorist movement in Punjab and the Terai area of Uttar Pradesh, and tackling the separatist elements in Jammu and Kashmir. So he's the Bond right now, actually, with us. The rest are all fake copies. The government of India, in recognition of his outstanding services to national security, awarded him the Padma Shri in 1991. He was also a member National Security Advisory Board and is considered the architect of police reforms in the country. So, welcome Prakash ji in today's episode.
Thank you. Nice meeting you.
Nice meeting you too. It's an absolute honor. I almost lost my breath in reading so much, about your introduction. Khatam nahi ho raha tha, and I think, till now that I've been following James Bond and I've been following Top Cop in Hindi films, I'm meeting the real deal right now. So I have to really ask you the right questions. So, what inspired you to join the Indian Police Service, and how did your early life shape your journey as an IPS officer? Don't tell me it was one of those films or it was one of those, things that wanted you to just have the two guns on your side and then go out there and go into battlefield. Tell me, Prakash ji.
Frankly, I was not inspired to join the Indian Police Service. I just found myself in the police service. And initially, there was some reservation, hesitation, but I accepted it as God's wish that I should be in the police. I accepted it in that spirit. But the first 4 or 5 years were not very pleasant, and quite often between myself and my wife, we would talk whether I should stay in the police or work out and go back to the teaching line. I started my career as an assistant professor in the University of Allahabad. But my wife would always say, Nini, don't take such a radical decision so soon. Give it a trial for some more time and then decide. But after 5 or 6 years, I started feeling that no, it's a service worth staying in, because I was at that time in Nagaland at the very start of my career, and I felt that look here, I'm doing something which is contributing to national security. It may be 0.01%, but I was contributing to it, and somebody has to be here to do the intelligence, to take care of the intelligence part in this very sensitive area where the rebels want to break away from India and have a separate country like Nagaland. So, that inspired me. No, I have to stay on. I'm contributing to maintaining the integrity of the country. So, that's how the inspiration started, I would say. Later on, as I started climbing up the ladder in the States, I felt I got a different feeling. I found that the police was a very powerful instrument of social service. Forget about the livelihood. Livelihood you can earn anywhere. You can open a pawn shop or have an ice cream uh, shop. You can earn a livelihood either way. But police is a very powerful instrument of social service because it gives us so much power. And by curbing crime, by going hard against criminals, by sort of putting mafia behind the bars, getting justice to a poor man, saving somebody from the atrocities of a zamindar, things like that. So it's a very powerful instrument of social service if you are really if you really enforce the law and act as a people's policeman. So that kept me going. That no, it's a very powerful instrument of social service, and I should continue here. So
You have to tell us about Nagaland. I'm not letting you go without hearing from you what was it like in Nagaland, because we've heard stories about how The terrorism there is at another level altogether. We've heard about these stories of the village headmen who actually have heads in their homes and skulls in their homes. So this is like a totally different world. Please narrate with us one incident that you remember from Nagaland.
There are several incidents. The one story which has become very popular, if you want, I can repeat that or have a different story. The one story which has become very popular when you see. See, the Nagas those days, in the early years of insurgency, they used to go to East Pakistan. It was then East Pakistan, not Bangladesh then. And they used to go to East Pakistan for arms and training and weaponry and explosives and all that. But government of India was able to plug that route. Then once that route was plugged, then they were in a dilemma. But they worked out a plan to go to China. What they would do, they would cross the Sumatra Tract of Burma and then move northwards, and they would go to Yunnan province of China, where they were welcomed and given training. So one such gang led by Brigadier Tenuseli and Mohua, who is still there. Tenuseli is probably no longer alive. So they led a formidable gang of 350 men to China, and they stayed in China for almost a year, getting training and indoctrination and everything. The gang eventually came back. They had difficulty in entering the borders because the security forces were on the alert. So what they did, they entered in threes and fours and fives from different places, so that a mass movement was not detected. And then they converged at one place in the Angami area called Jotsoma. It was a secret camp of the Naga army, and 350 men were camping there. Now, the Indian government of India was worried that, look, this gang has come from China and we don't know where they are. And if they decide to strike, it will be very difficult to deal with them because 350 men equipped and trained in China are going to be a formidable force. So government was very worried on that account, and they put pressure on the army there. The army general, GOC 8 Mountain Division, he called me. He said, Prakash, we want you to find the location. So I said, sir, I also don't know, but let me try. Give me some time. So he gave me some time, and I deputed all my sources, and ultimately we got to know that yes, they are camping at Jotsoma. So then I discussed that with the general, and we worked out a plan that the Jotsoma camp would be surrounded, and believe me, a whole brigade was deployed to surround the camp of Jotsoma, and it was a midnight operation, but unfortunately, while the cordon was still being laid, say about 3 a.m. or 4 a.m. around that time, uh, one of the Naga army men, the Naga rebel army men, he went out to ease himself, and probably he noticed some movement, some shadows, or some rustle of uh, leaves and this that, and he got suspicious, and he came back and alerted that something is happening, and probably the Indian army is there. So they got to know that yes, Indian army is there, and they are being surrounded. So in great hurry, and I must say, a remarkable packing. They packed all their belongings, their weapons, their ammunition, this that, and they decided that they have to gate crash through an area which they found, according to them, vulnerable. So they crashed through that area, but there was a fierce engagement. It was a company headed by Major Bishwas. Major Bishwas got killed. Some army men also got killed, and I suppose some Nagas also would have suffered casualties. But they crashed through. But even then, we were able to capture about 22 of Nagas and with some documents, some weapons. And that became, for the first time in the history of insurgency, an incontrovertible evidence of China's involvement in India's northeast. Incontrovertible evidence. Because we had the diaries which they were maintaining in Yunnan and what kind of instructions they were getting. And the charge d'affaires of in Delhi was called by the Indian Foreign Ministry, and he was given a warning. I mean, warning or say displeasure. So that's how it happened. And the Nagas got very, very worried as to how their secret camp, we could learn about it and then raid it without their getting to know that this thing is going to happen. So their reverse intelligence started operating, and they got to know that they're flourishing with the man who is responsible for all this, which has happened. And then the Naga federal government, as they used to style, Naga federal government president issued an ahza that this is what has happened, and Prakash Singh is responsible for it. And the ahza, or the farman, or the order, it was directed to what they call the Naga Security Command. Naga Security Command is specialized in assassinations and blowing up bridges, trains, and that was the kind of the charter given to them. the Azza was issued addressed to them, and that you take care of Prakash Singh now. Now, take care of Prakash Singh meant only one thing, that you just finish him. But our intelligence was so good that we got a copy of this within, I think, a week or 10 days of its issue. And the copy was placed on my table as I was going through the documents intercepted and delivered at my office last evening. And suddenly I found that document. That really I just didn't know what to do. Here is a document which concerned my own safety. So I went to the boss, the deputy director, who was a DIG, and we talked about it. And he said that you send a flash message to Delhi about it, and then let us seek instructions. Message was sent, and I was asked to take the first flight to Delhi, which I took. And in Delhi, I was met by the director of Intelligence Bureau, the senior most officer of the IB, and the DIG who was looking after the Northeast, Mr. Ken Prasad. So they asked me about an assessment of the situation. I gave them a frank assessment, and I said that yes, this is a threat, and this that. They said they were very sporting, I must say, very generous and very concerned about my safety. They said, Prakash, you need not go back to Nagaland. You stay here. We'll give you a posting, and you join here tomorrow in Delhi itself. And as far as your wife and your two sons are concerned, we'll send a helicopter to evacuate them. Now I don't know what came to me. I mean, within a few seconds, some ideas flashed, and my response was, "No, sir. I believe in Jako Rakhe Saiya, Mare Sake Na Koi. I'll go back and finish my tenure and come back." Somehow, I mean, the feeling inside me was that, look, if you join in Delhi, nobody will say anything. Nobody will criticize you for joining in Delhi. But in the heart of my hearts, I'll always have this feeling that, Prakash, you got scared and you ran away. I was not prepared to have that feeling for the rest of my life, that you got scared and you ran away from Nagaland. So I said, no, I'll stay back, face the music, so to say. So I stayed there for that 2-3 months. By God's grace, nothing serious happened. Although I was playing a hide and seek game, and my movements were not known, my locations were not known. I took all the precautions, and there was there were inquiries by the overground leaders कि साहब आजकल दिखते नहीं कहाँ चले गए, that kind of thing. So that happened, and fortunately, from our point of view, there was a rift in the leadership of the rebels. A rival faction emerged, which started calling itself the Revolutionary Government of Nagaland, and in the course of that rift, their headquarters at Chedema was ransacked. Now they got. I would say their attention got diverted, and they got busy sorting out their own affairs also. And I think for some time, my issue was forgotten. And by that time, my tenure was over, and I was able to leave Nagaland safely. So
Prakashji, why do you think that they have this whole thing of not wanting to be part of India?
they say we were never a part of the British, we were never a part of India, and that time we were conquered by the British, and so we became a part of India. So now that the British have left, we have become ipso facto independent. That was a very facile argument drawn by them. But if you go through history, you find that the Homs always exercised sovereignty over the Nagas, and in the Burunjis there are there are several mentions of Home kings having entered Nagaland, conquered, defeated the Naga chieftains, and then insisting on some kind of tributes to be paid to them yearly, this that. So I mean, it's a false narrative which they have built, that they are that they are a nation. They were never a nation. In fact, the feeling of nationhood came much after independence, and it was given to them by Fizo. Earlier, otherwise, all the tribes were divided, and the intertribal clashes would very frequently take place. In fact, between neighboring villages, there would be fights, and headhunting was a favorite pastime in the old days, and the different tribes would clash with each other. There was nothing like a Naga nation as such. Naga nation is a modern concept which developed after independence.
So, Prakashji, how would you characterize your journey as an author, considering your multiple books? I mean, I am gobsmacked just listening to you. I have to remember these words, what you just now said, because fear is such a thing that most of us, we are always so scared of our own lives, and having been on the forefront, hiding and not taking the easy route out, and also becoming an author. So, tell me, मतलब ये कैसे ये सारा कुछ कैसे होता है, प्रकाश जी?
Author, देखिए असर तो ऐसे है कि as I said, I started my career as assistant professor, so I was fond of reading and writing. that was, and that interest I sustained throughout my career, even while serving. And whenever I was in an area, somehow I would get an intuitive feeling that this is an area I'm very fond of and I'll write about it. So whatever material, I mean, overground material, published material was available, I would keep on sort of collecting and I was very fond of keeping news cutting files. uh, Anything of interest to me, I will just make a cutting and keep a file. So, I mean, if today I have a whole lot of documents. In fact, somebody from the Calcutta Museum has approached me to say, you hand over the material to us. I have a lot of material on Naxals and material going back to 50 years. 50 years. I mean, old photographs, old articles, they're available with me about about the Nagaland, about Naxalite movement. So, areas and subjects which interested me, I kept on collecting material about that. That I will write at the appropriate time. Nagaland, the inspiration to write the book on Nagaland came because, you see, even while I was leaving Nagaland, there was one night where I remember I was not able to sleep the whole night. And I kept on thinking, I mean, these were memorable days. What do I do about it? So suddenly the idea that no, I should write a book. And believe me, the complete outlines of the book uh, flashed through my mind during that night itself. And when I wrote the contents, those were the very headings which came to my mind at night time. That was the only book I wrote while still in service. All the others were written after service because Naxalite book on Naxalite movement, I knew that whatever I want to write, I will not be able to write as a serving officer because all books had to be submitted to the MHA and they would vet it and they would say, no, no, don't write this, don't write that. So Nagaland was vetted, but there was no problem there, not much of a problem there. But Naxalite movement, I knew I'll run into serious problems. So I waited for my retirement to write the second book on Naxalite movement. So, I mean, that's how. I mean, police reforms was a mission with me, so I wrote on that. All the books I said, which I wrote, they were because I felt deeply committed in the subject and deeply involved in the matters. That's how I wrote those books.
There's a huge academician lurking inside a top cop, Prakash Singh ji. I mean, this is such an amazing combination. So tell me a little bit about any lasting impact on you. मतलब you've been across कितने सारे मतलब जब मैं पढ़ रही थी आपकी introduction तो सबसे ज्यादा जो lasting impact रहा है आपका, which would you consider the most significant, in your tenure as a top cop?
The significant tenure, I would say, was in Punjab, and not as the top cop, but as Inspector General Border Security Force Punjab. I was there from 87 to 91. I was in. Normally, you go there for 2 years, but those were days where Punjab posting was not. People were not hankering after Punjab posting. So Prakash Singh is there, and he's doing his job, and he's not asking for a change. I mean, for me, why should I ask for a change? It is for you. You know my tenure. You transfer me. If I ask for a change, you will say, "Oh, अब डर गए, अब वापस चलना है." So I would keep quiet about it. No, like that, 3 years passed, 4 years passed, and that 4 year tenure was really unforgettable because it was like fighting a battle every day, every day. I mean, every time I stepped out of the BSF campus, I knew that I was going through dangerous territory where anything could happen, and maybe I may not come back in one piece in the evening. That kind of feeling was there, but then the situation had to be faced, and the job had to be done, and the terrorists had to be fought. So that, so 4 years in a state of you can say tension, excitement, facing dangers, threats, all kinds of things and challenges. It was every day. I mean, those 4 years I'll never forget in my life, and I'm proud of whatever I contributed to the security of Punjab. In one sentence, I would say that, but for what the border security force did on the borders, but for that, Punjab terrorism would have continued for another 10 or 15 years. But for what we did, because you see, in any terrorist movement, one of the essential things is that you should have a continuous, regular supply of oxygen. And that's oxygen was they were getting from Pakistan in terms of weaponry, in terms of explosives, in terms of the equipment, in terms of finances. Everything was coming from Pakistan because Pakistan had thrown its entire might to ensure that Khalistan becomes a reality and that Punjab breaks up. That was their game, and so it required tremendous effort on our part to frustrate Pakistan's designs. And in that, the border security force, during my tenure, they made a tremendous contribution because we secured the borders. We secured the borders to an extent where Vasant Singh Jafarwal, in one of his letters, he himself wrote, a top terrorist leader, he himself wrote that now it's become very difficult to cross the border. So earlier, what was happening, if you neutralized 10 terrorists, they were replaced by another batch of 10 from Punjab, from Pakistan, because rural youth from rural areas were all the time moving over to Pakistan. We stopped in exfiltration, we stopped infiltration. So both I wouldn't say stopped 100%, but is where earlier 10 people were going, only one or two were able to go and come back. So that made a huge difference to the terrorist movement, and it became the law of diminishing returns started operating for terrorists because their hardcore strength from 400 to 300 to 200 to 100. Once it came in two digits, we knew that the battle is won.
Wonderful. My God. Amazing, amazing, amazing. And there should be a film made on you, actually. It's, yeah, absolutely. You face so many threats to your life at so many various postings. How did you manage to really navigate through these dangerous situations? And tell me, how did you really delve into this perseverance? Is it because of the way you grew up as a child? Is it because of, I mean, there has to be something. When I look back at my own self, I have rebooted my career, and then there is this whole thing of wanting to continue. I mean, there are days when you feel that, you're tired and out, but you still go ahead and you start that. So ये जो अंदर से जो perseverance है, where have you got this from?
I would say it was partly because of the sanskar given to me by my father. One of the things which he drilled into my mind that look, uh, God decides the day of your arrival and decides the day of your departure. In between, you have all the time to do whatever you can. Of course, there also, to a certain extent, this sphere of what you can do, that sphere of activity is also circumscribed by your past karma. It's a very complicated thing. It's difficult to explain how much freedom you have in life and how much you're uh, hedged in and constrained by your past karma. But one thing is certain that until the day of departure comes, no one can take away your life. So I said, even no one can take away my life, then I'll perform my duties to the best of my ability. And if I have to go and if my time is over, then there's no stopping that process. Then ठीक है, चले जाएंगे. उसमें फिर मतलब मौत का डरना क्या है? अपना कर्तव्य करेंगे, बाकी ईश्वर के हाथ में छोड़ दो. ईश्वर की जैसी इच्छा होगी, जब बुलाना होगा बुला लेंगे. That kind of thought was ingrained in my mind. So I still remember, I mean, quite often, I mean, there were times when after inspecting a battalion, in the evening, I would say, I want to go, now I'll go back to Jalandhar, my headquarters. My commandants would say, sir, it is now sunset time, it's not safe to go. Because sunset time is most dangerous for ambushes, because it is dangerous from ambush point of view, because you ambush while there is still twilight, and then by the time reinforcements come, it is dark. Then you can disappear. So sunset time is very bad. But once they would say, sir, sunset time is bad and you should not be going, then again the same thought. ये अगर मैं नहीं गया तो होगा साहब भी डर गए और रात को यहीं सो रहे हैं, then नहीं, अब तो मुझे जाना ही है, ठीक है. So quite and I knew that anything can happen in this area. I would tell the driver कि भैया देखो उन दिनों there was no mobile. I would say कैसेट लगा दो गाड़ी में, कुछ भक्ति का गाना, भगवान का नाम बजता रहे, ताकि अगर मरना भी है तो कम से कम आखिर में भगवान का नाम लेके ही ऊपर जाएंगे. And of course, carbine in one hand. I mean, I'll die fighting and listening to God's name. I was prepared for that. Such situations came several times. Yeah. There's a phrase called hair-raising moments. I mean, those are moments when really the hair rose. You could see how this phrase has been formed. You're tense. You know anything can happen at the next moment. Then you are prepared for it mentally, but you're listening to God's music. You have also the weapon in your hands. All right, we'll find it. So that's all.
Wow. Wow. Tell me a little bit about the ULFA in Assam, because I know that they were also a very, very, a strong rebel group. And, there was a lot of murder of the policemen, of local people with the ULFA. And, I think the Bodo separatist movement was also there during that time. And so tell me a little bit about how did you deal with all of them there? Because entire Northeast was actually on fire.
Yes, in ULFA were a formidable challenge when I took charge. And in fact, I was sent there essentially because government was worried. They had announced their plan to hold elections there. And ULFA had said that we'll not allow elections to be held. We'll frustrate the electoral exercise. So at that time, the government of India somehow felt, rightly or wrongly, I won't say, that an Assam police officer will not be able to take strict action against ULFA. So we need to get an officer from outside. And by that time, I had completed my tenure. It was 4 years. They said, "भाई 4 साल हो गया, अब तो इसको निकालो पंजाब से." So I was due for change also, and due for promotion also. They said, so I was called by the Prime Minister himself and told that you have to go to Assam and take charge. I mildly protested. Protested not because I was scared of going to Assam, but I said Assam is a big state, and in a big state there are officers of the cadre waiting for promotion. They will look upon me with feelings of jealousy. How has this intruder come, and how does he take over the? But they said no, no. We have thought of all those considerations, and still we feel that you should go. So then I quietly accepted the challenge. Now dealing with Ulfa, you see, uh, I had not much. I didn't have much of a problem because you see I found that any police force uh, in the country, depending on the leadership, it is prepared to deliver. It is prepared to go all out. And the same Assam police, about which people told me that ये तो लाहे लाहे काम करते हैं, but I found that them very good, and they responded to the challenge. And my strategy was that, I mean, Assam police, I must also say that I found their intelligence much better than what I found the intelligence to be in UP. Very good intelligence network they had. Every evening morning we'll have a session with the intelligence chief, and then we will decide what action to be taken today. What action to be taken depending on the latest inputs which have been received by that time. So we'll decide on action that these are the areas where we have information about the presence of Ulfa, and then the nearest battalions or the nearest superintendent of police will be given instructions to raid those camps. So what the only thing we did was kept Ulfa under constant pressure, daily pressure. And I don't think Ulfa had witnessed so much, were not used to experiencing that much pressure. In fact, there was some kind of a, you can say, mutual understanding with Assam police and at the local level, कि भैया तुम हमको मत छेड़ना, हम तुमको नहीं छेड़ेंगे, that kind of thing. But that thing was over once I took charge. No, they had to be chased, they had to be hounded, and they were under pressure all the time. At the 11th hour, somehow, they also felt that probably for some reason they decided that no, no, we not disturb the elections. So somehow elections could be held, and not a bullet had to be fired, and popular government was installed. So dealing with Ulfa was not much of a problem. I just galvanized the Assam police and motivated them to be chasing, hounding, and sort of all the time, all 30 days of the month, Ulfa, and that's how we were able to build pressure and ensure that elections are held.
And how was it in, Uttar Pradesh, your tenure as a DGP?
It was very tough. It was more, I mean, physically and mentally, it was more draining than even Punjab, I would say, because there was too much of mental strain. I mean, in Punjab, you knew the enemy, and you knew that you have to fight, you have to kill, you have to kill, you have to fire, and or you get shot dead. But here, dealing with the political situation, the communal situation was very tricky. The mafia had started showing its teeth at that time and then there was this problem of the Ram Janmabhoomi problem was also building up. Then on top of that, there was terrorism in Tarai. Terrorism, UP police, I mean, the officers, the normal refrain I would hear is, sir, हम ये मर्डर डकैती कम्युनल राइट ये तो सब हम लोग डील करते हैं, टेररिज्म कैसे डील करते हैं? तो मैंने कहा कोई बात नहीं है, I have experience of dealing with terrorism in Punjab and Assam. I'll tell you how to deal with it. Don't worry. So we worked out a plan, and we were very successful in Terai because within a year and a half we were able to liquidate terrorism from there. And the best part was, and of which I'm really proud, that the legacy of bitterness which we saw in Punjab, legacy of bitterness of police high-handedness and cold-blooded killings and all that, and human rights violations, all these matters came up after terrorism had been defeated there. But in Terai, nothing of the kind happened. I mean, we followed a different strategy. Our operations were clean, and once the movement was crushed, it was crushed, and people were happy about it.
What motivated you to file the PIL for police reforms, and did you anticipate the landmark verdict by the Supreme Court?
Firstly, what motivated me? Look, my 35 years of experience in police convinced me that there's something fundamentally wrong with the functioning of the police. I mean, even when you are acting very conscientiously, even when you are trying to enforce the rule of law, even when you are acting as per the law of the land, you are somebody finds fault with you, and somebody wants to suspend you, somebody wants to punish you, somebody wants to transfer you. What is this tamasha? I mean, what do you want from a police officer? Do you want him to function and enforce the law or not? I mean, these questions were irritating my mind throughout. At the end of my career, I said that no, something needs to be done about it for the next generation of police officers, for the coming generations of officers. So then I studied all the reports. Of course, I had seen all those reports, but then I made a thorough study of all the reports, and especially the National Police Commission. And based on its recommendations, I said no, a public interest litigation should be filed. Uh, there were about six prayers which I had made in the petition. Then there was problem of finding an advocate because I didn't have the money to pay the advocate. They charge fabulous fees. I said I must find somebody who will work pro bono, and ultimately I was able to get Mr. Prashant Bhushan. Also, mind you, it required a lot of persuasion because he was also not inclined to take it up. He said, "No, no, police बड़ी बेईमान force है, ये इसको मारती है, पीटती है, ये करे all kinds of things which you normally hear about the police." He said, "I said, but you need to understand why is police like that. Unless you go to the root of it, you will not understand. And I want to tackle those root problems." Ultimately, he got convinced, and I must say he didn't charge one paisa. So the legal battle was fought for 10 years. That is how. Now, about the anticipating the judgment, frankly, in my prayers, I would say, कि, हे भगवान, हमने जो मांगा है कोर्ट से अगर 60% भी मिल जाए तो मैं आपको बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद दूंगा और हमें प्रार्थना सुन लीजिए. But God was very kind, I must say, not 60%, but I got 100%. Everything that I had asked for, we got. Because the Supreme Court saw the reasonableness and the legitimacy and the urgency of whatever we were asking for. And they also found that we had prepared a table where all the different commissions who had recommended what, we said that whatever we have asked for, some commission or the other has supported it. On there are certain recommendations which 3-4 commissions have recommended. When they saw the chart, they said, when this commissions headed by such brilliant people have recommended it, and Prakash Singh is only asking for those to be given. So let us give him everything. So they gave 100%. The petition was sanctioned.
So, as an architect of police reforms, what obstacles did you face in implementing the changes within your, within the organizations? Because I'm sure there must have been a lot of people जिन्होंने बोला होगा आपको कि ये क्या जरूरत है, क्यों करना है, और ज्यादातर हम जब कोई अच्छा काम करने के लिए आगे बढ़ते हैं, you'll have too many people telling you that, oh, it's not really important. So, what were the kind of challenges you faced internally?
Internally, you see, as the petition was progressing, let me tell you, for 2-3 years, a lot of several officers would show interest. Prakash, kya hua? Last hearing mein kya hua? They would ask me. After 4 or 5 years, they said, Prakash Singh is wasting his breath. Nothing is going to come out of it. He is dashing his head against the wall. And there was there was frozen silence. Nobody would talk to me about it. Which ये तो प्रकाश सिंह का दिमाग खराब है, इसमें लगे हुए हैं, ठीक है, लगे रहें तो आखिर में कुछ नहीं निकलना है इसमें तो. But when the judgment came, everybody was surprised. Everybody was surprised that it was the landmark judgment. And then again, there was a revival of interest for some time again. Because now, internally, I would say, why in the implementation, the main problem which we are experiencing are from two levels, very broadly, from the level of politicians and from the bureaucrats. You see, to explain it very simply, I said that if you ask to sign on the Zamindari Abolition Act, he will never do that. So similarly, the bureaucrats and the politicians also felt that whatever not control, but I say stranglehold over the police they have, this will go once these reforms are implemented and once the police is given a certain level of autonomy, it is functioning. So they have been opposing tooth and nail. And the problem with our politicians and bureaucrats is, it's some kind of addiction. Once you get addicted to a drug, you don't want to give it up. They are addicted to exercising power over the police. And this addiction has been passed on to them by the British. The British exercised this power because they needed it. They were an imperial power. They had come here to rule and not to govern and promote the welfare of the people. They had come here to govern and sort of drain your economy for the benefits of UK. So but once you have your own people, your own government, I think the objective has to be different, the motivation has to be different, and the attitude to police has to be different. So the politicians and the bureaucrats both have been opposing it generally. I mean, there are very few politicians, I would say, hardly 5% politicians and maybe about 10% bureaucrats who support police reforms. Otherwise, by and large, there is consistent opposition to it. And that is why we are not able to make substantial progress in the matter of police reforms.
So, what do you think are the critical reforms that's needed in the Indian police force as of today?
See, the one reform which is most critically needed is insulating the police from external pressures of any kind. That is very absolutely necessary because today the police is under constant pressure all the time. In all, I mean, unless you have a poor man who has no clout, who has no say, otherwise, in all important cases, you are working under pressure, and the pressure is dictated by political considerations. The pressure may be reduced tomorrow. Another government comes there, it exercises pressure in a different direction. But there are always pressures, and because of those pressures, we are not able to uh, do justice to the job that is given to us. I mean, we want to. All kinds of things are said about police. The policemen are. I mean, let me tell you. I'll give you one example. During the pandemic, Corona pandemic, policemen went much beyond their charter, and this is the only organization which beyond its charter looking after the people. I mean, getting their medicines, providing emergency relief, supplying cylinders, essential commodities. I mean, even singing and dancing to entertain the people who are imprisoned in the houses. It's the only organization, and during that time, a survey was conducted, and our popularity jumped to over 70%. And even BBC, which is always critical of the government, not forget about the police, critical of government in generally, even they said that police has played an excellent role during the emergency in India, and the Prime Minister himself said that police were that they showed their human side during the police during the pandemic. So, I mean, given the chance and the opportunity and a certain level of autonomy in functioning, we will deliver what whatever the people expect. I mean, fair play and justice, we'll do that. But when you don't when you sort of constrain us, certain things have to be done. Then because and the majority of officers don't want to take the risk of antagonizing the political leadership.
Because I remember, when Indira Gandhi had passed away, and this was a huge complaint from the Sikh community in Delhi that the police did not help them out. And, they had to stand there and watch so many of the women getting raped, the men being lit up. And obviously, also in Manipur, just recently, with the two women who were made to parade naked with the mob lynching that happened there. Even there, there is a confession of one of the girls that she tried to get into the police jeep and ask him to switch on the ignition of the jeep, but he said that he had lost the keys. So one also hears of these stories, and then what happens is that you start losing faith, in this entire system.
Yes, our credibility is very low because of this factor. You can blame us, yes, you can blame us, but unless you remove these external pressures, it's not fair to blame us.
Tell me a little bit about this real challenge that we have of securing India's borders today. Having been with the BSF, what are the pressing challenges? I mean, we constantly hear about Arunachal Pradesh, where the Chinese are day by day going in, infiltration from Pakistan. There's like we're surrounded on all sides. If you look at our own country, so what do you think would be the challenges there?
Securing India's borders is really a huge challenge because we have about 15 to 16,000 kilometers of land borders and about 8,000 kilometers of sea borders,
Yeah.
islands. So it's about almost 25,000 kilometers. I mean, no country in the world has this kind of problem of such dimensions along its borders. I mean, when I talk to, say, any experts in US, I say, doubt how lucky you are. You have a friendly border on the friendly country to the north, Canada, and then from the south. The only problem is of illegal migration, and that also is because you permit a certain level of migration. If you want, you can stop that also. So you have no problem. And then if, then you have oceans on either side, so there's no threat really. But we have to guard this entire 20, what, almost 22,000 kilometers of water. It's a huge problem. Now, one thing which I would like to emphasize, see, a lot of mechanization, electrification, and gadgetry and sophisticated devices are being placed along the borders. But one thing I would like to emphasize that there is no substitute for manpower. And the great lesson of what happened, what Israel suffered recently, they had the finest gadgetry and all the equipments, and yet they were taken by surprise because manpower they had withdrawn, or manpower, uh, the kind of vigilance the manpower should exercise, that was not there. So whatever gadgetry you may place, whatever obstacles you may place, but there is no substitute for manpower. And manpower has to be there along the borders, vigilant all the time. This is one thing I would like. I would like BSF not to make that mistake in India. I mean, the Israelis have made this mistake of relying entirely on gadgetry. Gadgetry is fine, but gadgetry should be an aid to your uh, your manpower and your firepower. That should be it. This is one fundamental lesson which I think I will impress upon the BSF to remember. Otherwise, they are very sophisticated devices. I mean, in fact, in my time, it was in my time that the border security fencing was raised for the first time. And again, I recall with a sense of pride that it was at it was at my recommendation that the fencing was raised. And when we designed the fence, we ensured that it was the best fence in the world at that time. It was far better than the fence which US had along the Mexico border. It was far better than the fence which North and South Korea had between them, because we managed to get designs from both the places, Mexico fencing and the Korean fencing, and we improved upon both. So when the border security fence was raised along Punjab border in those critical years, it was the best fence in the world.
What are the key leadership lessons you learned from managing large and diverse police forces? Please share with our listeners.
See, commanding the state police is one thing, and commanding the paramilitary force or the border security force is different. But there are certain common factors. I'll mention those. Number one, you have to lead from the front. Lead from the front. There's no question of you staying back. I mean, wherever, howsoever dangerous the situations were, whether in UP or in BSF, I was always there, right in the thick of it. As DGP UP, I walked into Nanak Mata Gurudwara, which was like going into the Golden Temple at a time when the Golden Temple is being held and dominated by the terrorists. I mean, it was like that. But I went into Nanak Mata Gurudwara. I talked to them. I talked frankly to them, and my message was that look, either if you are going to fight, then no quarters will be given to you. But if you come out with your problems, with your grievances, with your difficulties, I take the responsibility of removing them to the best of my ability. So, so leading from the front, that is example. That is point number one. Secondly, I would say today I find some kind of hiatus between the men and the officers. I mean, between the officers and the men, whether you are commanding a state police or a paramilitary organization, there has to be complete bonding. Complete bonding. There is no question of you're letting down the men or the men letting you down. The men should know that this officer will fight for my rights, will get us justice under all circumstances. And you should know that this man will stand by me, howsoever dangerous the situation may be. There has to be a complete bonding, complete identity between the men and the officer. That is not there today. That is not there today. And so many officers complain कि साहब जवान लड़ने नहीं जाते हैं और वो भाग जाते हैं. यार, लड़ने कैसे जाएंगे? पहले आप तो लड़ने का उदाहरण प्रस्तुत करिए. In Terai, at one stage I was told that the superintendents of police were not going out of their headquarters, and they were mostly headquarter bound. At that time, I said, "All right, I'm coming to Terai myself." And one full day, I said, "We one full day we'll spend in the jungle, and I'll be there with you." So the entire all the superintendents of police were dragged out of their headquarters, and we combed the entire jungle from morning to evening. So when lead from the front and have complete rapport with your men. And I think integrity is also very important. Integrity is very important because once you're lacking in that, but, then something or the other will go wrong somewhere. And we'll get to know कि साहब बात तो कुछ करते हैं पर अंदर से तो वो अंदर खाने तो ऐसा काम हो रहा है. तो वो you have to be clean and you have to be transparent and men should be able to say कि साहब के कथनी और करने में कोई फर्क नहीं, जो बात वो हमसे कहते हैं वो खुद करते भी हैं. You have to be a man of integrity. Otherwise, there are a whole lot of other things, but I think these three should suffice.
What would you like to tell the younger generation aspiring to become police officers based on your career journey? Of course, most of them would like to, imagine themselves on the front out there and really going into ambush because most people are so inspired with the Hindi films that they watch, but the reality is totally different. But what is it that you would like to tell them?
See, police job, let me say, is a very difficult, very difficult. I would say probably it is the toughest job in the country today. Toughest job because the challenges are very serious. You see, you may be aware, but let me tell the audience through you that about 700 to 1,000 policemen die every year in the performance of their duties. And this figure in most of the in most of the Western countries of the world is in two digits only. But 10, 12, 15, that is their number. And our number runs into 700 to 1,000 every year. Policemen die in the performance of their duties. Now, so the job is really tough. The job is really tough. So you have to be prepared for a tough life, and there will be severe constraints on your functionings. But at the same time, if you have the guts, you can, even with the existing whatever latitude that is given to you, you can deliver a lot. You can achieve a lot. And because of the constraints, I would say it should be your endeavor all the time to uphold the rule of law. In the process, you will run into opposition. You will run into difficulties. You will be criticized. You will be dethroned. You will be shunted out. You should be prepared to make sacrifices. And I say, look, if the leadership decides, leadership means what? In a state, let us say 10 top police officers constitute the leadership. Okay. If all the 10 officers decide that no, we shall do only the right things, we shall not carry out illegal orders, then where are you going to get the Director General Police from? You appoint A, he says no, I will not. I'll do this and not the wrong thing. You appoint B, number 2, he also does the same thing. You appoint number 3, then you get fed up. All right, we have to compromise with these fellows. We have to adjust with these fellows. They are prepared to sacrifice. They are prepared to lose their jobs, but they are not prepared to do unlawful things at your bidding. So leadership there has to be a willingness to sacrifice in the performance of their duties.
You obviously believe in a divine power that's protected you throughout your career, so is it true? And tell me a little bit about it. What do you feel about this statement?
You see, frankly, while in service, it never struck me that such and such thing was happening. But after the service, when I pondered over events of past years, when as Shakespeare said, when in the sessions of in the sessions of silent thought, you remember things of past, something like that. Shakespeare said. When I started reflecting on my past events, I really wondered as to how I came out unscathed from certain situations where a death would have been a normal occurrence. I walked into a Naga army camp incognito. Yes, but if my identity had been disclosed, I think they would have chopped off my head and said, "All right, that's fine, Mr. Prakash. We'll keep your head as a trophy." So when the threat from the China after the China return gang thing, there was a clear order from the Naga rebel government signed by their own president that Prakash Singh should be disposed of. And yet I decided to stay in. I said, I do feel that there was some invisible force, some unseen power, which was protecting me. I mean, call it by whatever name you like. Call it a divine power. Call it whatever you you will. But for me, it was a divine protection.
Absolutely, it was a divine protection for sure. I completely agree with you on that. So, some quick questions for you. What do you think is the bigger threat to India today, Pakistan or China, and why?
China, of course, from a long-term point of view, Pakistan has ceased to be a problem. It's more of a nuisance than a challenge. They are nowhere. I mean, their economy is in doldrums. They are fighting for atta and whatnot. I think Mukesh Ambani can buy Pakistan. I mean, financially, financially, we have so much of wealth compared to them. They don't have 2 3 billions. We have our 640 billions we have got. So Pakistan is no longer a challenge. But it's more of a nuisance, and it is thriving because of our capacity to tolerate a lot of nonsense. So China is a big threat because their economy is stronger, their military power is stronger. But I refuse to be scared by China. Every time somebody says, I give him the example of David and Goliath. It requires brains to defeat an enemy which is superior in muscle power and firepower or whatever. But it requires brains, and if you have the brains, you can not only take on China, but you can worst them also.
Anything that you regret?
Nothing really, but except that my border security force tenure was very short, very short, it was just about 7 months, and even the force regretted for several decades कि सर आपने आपको हम लोगों ने इतना मिस करते हैं और आप केवल 7 महीने में चले गए अब थोड़े दिन और रहे होते तो फोर्स का बहुत भला हो जाता थिंग्स लाइक दैट आई केप्ट ऑन हियरिंग for more than a decade. So I wish my tenure had been. It was just because you see, we retired at 58, and I had already done as Director General Police Assam. I had done as DGP UP. I was racing against time. I would say God was kind that I got three organizations to head. Otherwise, in life, if you get one, if you are able to head one state police or one organization, you consider yourself lucky.
Your next book?
Well, I think Unforgettable Chapters is my last testament, but you never know.
We will wait for the next book also. What about the influential figures or mentors in your life that significantly impacted your career and outlook?
Influential person, you see, as a student, in my early years, Swami Vivekananda became my role model, and I was deeply influenced by him. And I think as a student itself, I finished most of the literature. I wouldn't say I went through complete works, but most of the literature of Swami Vivekananda I studied as a student itself. And that brought me in touch with the Ramakrishna Mission, where I studied a lot of books on India's ancient heritage, culture, which shaped my career, you can say, uh, which shaped me as an individual. So that was my role model, and of course, in service, Shravan Tandon trained me. He was a man who believed in perfection in everything. Not many people know him today, but he was a man of the highest integrity and professionally quite sound. Then another officer was Jayan Chaturvedi of UP. He was also first commissioner of police Delhi. A man of great integrity. He also made influence on me. Uh, Bholanath Malik as director IB. I did not see much of him, but I would say he was a yogi in khaki. I mean, an absolutely clean person, completely detached from life and interested only in his work and work strictly according to principles, according to rules. Then, I mean, lately, Mr. Ribeiro, I'm still in touch with him. He's a great man and he's been a great officer, and I worked with him in Punjab. It was great working with him, shoulder to shoulder. He was working in the hinterland. I was working along the borders. Mr. KPS Gill, also a very lion-hearted man, not difficult to get along with. I had my own problems with him, but still, in the larger interest of the country, I never expressed those problems because he was senior to me, and even when he sort of did not give me my due or did not give me due respect, I would just still tolerate because we were fighting a battle, so there was no point in fighting amongst ourselves. But I know he was a lion-hearted man. So these were the men who influenced me.
And currently, I am highly influenced with you. And this has been such an honor, Prakash Singh ji, to have you on my podcast. It's been the fantastic start for my the month of June. because I was out on a holiday and I've just come back, and what a great way to start my podcasting, with you today. And I hope that you will write one more book, because I want to meet you and hear about the next Naxals and the Naxalite movement of India, because being from Bengal, I've heard so much about it and how it started and what happened there. But that I think I will do with you in person. And we will wait for your next book and wish you lots and lots of luck. And thank you so much for being on today's podcast.
Thanks a lot, Mohua. Great pleasure talking to you and interacting.
Thank you for tuning into the Literature Lounge, which is an all-year-round literature festival dedicated to writers across the globe. You can get in touch with us via LinkedIn or DM us at our Instagram page, The Mohua Show. Or you can also email us at hello@themohuashow.com to discuss your books and also meet authors you haven't yet met at the Literature Lounge.